Morning, everyone. Good to see you virtually after our exciting in-person March meeting. I'm Cindy DeBala, Tacoma Park City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem, and also the chair this year of the CEEPC committee. We have a packed agenda with a couple of big voting items coming up. So without too much ado, we'll get to it. I do want to say first that if we do run out of time in one of the discussions, I'll adjust the time at that point, and I'll let y'all know. Do we have a quorum? Because our first item of business is to adopt the meeting summary from the March meeting, which you can find online if you haven't already taken a look at it. Do we have a quorum?
I'm working on that count right now, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. So on all of the voting items, motions and seconds can be made verbally or in the chat box. If you raise your hand, I might miss it because that'd be a lot of things for me to keep track of, but I will try. But I would prefer, I think, verbally if possible. And then we'll say a motion to approve or seconds, changes, abstentions, and unless I hear online or see in the chat box anybody saying no or typing no, we would then assume that whatever the matter is going to be passed, rather than literally counting. So ready to roll? So while you're working on that, I'll just say that the other big items today are to discuss accepting the mid-course review of the climate goals that we've been looking at pieces of and talking about for the last few months, to talk to you about the fact that CEEPC is scheduled in the form of myself to go to the July COG board meeting to outline what we think the implications are of this report and to discuss to lay out some things for them to do if they would like to do them. Because I think we all know, whether it says it in the report or in a letter or how it's structured, that they need to take this seriously. So we've gotten, per the advice that everybody gave in March, we've gotten on the agenda, and I need some help when we talk about the review, the mid-course review acceptance. I need some help in talking about that, what to cover. And then we have the work plan for next year for the programs, the climate programs for COG, and that's a pretty big business also. Plus we have a couple of presentations. So I'm going to assume at this point we have a quorum, and I'm going to go ahead and say that again, the first item of business is to adopt the meeting summary from our March meeting. So do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the meeting summary. This is Sarah Bagley.
Thank you, Sarah. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And any changes that anyone would like to see made? Either just shout them out or put them in the chat. Okay, hearing none, I am going to go to the vote. So are there any abstentions? And are there any abstentions? For the March meeting, are there any no's? Okay, so then somebody else besides me is looking at the chat and there's nothing in there. We're good. We're good. Then I declare that we have approved. Yes? Approved the meeting.
Yes, the chat looks good. Sorry.
Approved the meeting minutes. And I see that there was a question about the board meeting. And yes, that is the July 22nd board meeting, not the retreat in June. So before we get to some of the working business, we have Julia Mano from Prince William County to talk about their annual sustainability report. And I'm really excited about this because I don't hear from personally hear from Prince William County very much. And I think it will just be great to hear your accomplishments over the last year and see what you got planned for us for the future. So I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Well, hopefully you'll be hearing from us more often as we're starting to
Yay.
be able to report on our progress. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Mano. I am the Director of the Office of Sustainability with Prince William County. And as was just mentioned, I'm very excited to be sharing a summary of Prince William County's first ever Environmental Sustainability Annual Report that was just released in April. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to be starting off with looking at our report, some background on some of the foundational strategy that has guided this work. I'm going to be covering the development of our annual report, how we pulled together the information, how we worked across the county to do so. I will share some report highlights and then share a little bit about what we can expect next. Next slide, please. So starting off with our county strategy, next slide, please. I'm going to start off by going back to 2020 to give a little more background. Back in 2020, our Board of County Supervisors adopted our climate mitigation and resiliency goals. These goals are focused on greatly reducing the county's greenhouse gas emissions, on integrating renewable energy, and on becoming more resilient to the impacts of climate change. Some of these goals are a direct reflection of our regional goals, of some of COG's goals, and are very closely aligned with our surrounding localities as well. Next slide, please. So after our goals were adopted in 2020, the county stood up our Office of Sustainability in 2022 so that we could have some leadership in moving towards these goals. And one of the first things that we did was to develop our Community Energy and Sustainability Master Plan, essentially as a roadmap for us to meet our goals. So the heart of the CEEPC are 25 high priority actions. They're focused under the categories of energy, buildings, transportation, natural resources, and climate adaptation. And this plan was adopted in late 2023. Next slide, please. Another foundational strategy for our county is our strategic plan. So our 2025 to 2028 strategic plan was adopted last year, and it includes our environment goal, which is to preserve the county's natural beauty and resources so that open spaces are created and maintained and residents can enjoy nature. And we have 5 main objectives under this goal. A lot of the CEEPC is wrapped into this strategic plan goal, but there's also a bit more of a focus on natural resource protection, where the CEEPC is more focused on meeting those climate goals. Next slide, please. So just a quick summary of our timeline here. Our goals were passed, our office was stood up, we created our CEEPC master plan. We also last year, or in May of 2024, initiated a sustainability and resiliency comprehensive plan amendment that will be wrapping the CEEPC into our 20-year comp plan, which is really important for our long-term planning for meeting our goals. And then April of this year, we are releasing our first report. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is really, we're about 2.5 years into implementation of our CEEPC. We're 1 year into implementation of our strategic plan, and it's really our first opportunity to share some of our progress with the community and with the region. So some of the main purposes of this report is to provide an annual update on our progress and performance for sustainability countywide. This is not an Office of Sustainability report. It's looking at countywide progress and initiatives. It's an opportunity for us to highlight our key accomplishments and also to share our sustainability story within the region. Next slide. So a little more about the development of this report. This was truly a collaborative effort across the county. We consulted with every agency and every quadrant of our government and reached out to allow the opportunity for us to capture activities that were happening countywide. Next slide. One of the, go back one, please. Thanks. Important foundational initiatives that was a part of this plan was we had been, was gathering data and data analysis that's foundational for tracking progress. And we have goals that are specific to our county government operations, but we did not have a county government operations greenhouse gas inventory. And part of the reason for that was that our data was decentralized across different agencies in terms of our utility bill payment, our energy data. So one of the first things that we did was our Office of Sustainability worked with Facilities and Fleet Management, and we got all of the departments that you see highlighted here onto one consolidated bill payment platform, Captoris, which some of you all may use as well. So now we're able to quickly pull our energy data, that we can translate into our emission data. And it's just more efficient overall in terms of, capturing any billing issues or flagging any potential operational issues within the county. And so we were able to use this data to create our first county government operations inventory for this report. Next slide. And we've just highlighted here all of the agencies that had significant contribution in the report, either through us highlighting some of their initiatives or through case studies. And I'm going to get to some case study examples in a little bit here. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so some examples of highlights that we have in our report. There's more detail on all of these initiatives within the report, but just a few examples. Firstly, out of the 25 high priority actions that I mentioned in the CEEPC, we are currently actively implementing 10 of them and have initiated, at least in the research phase with 17 of the 25. Looking at clean energy, the county has had over 3,100 residential solar systems installed since 2015. Looking at transportation, we've seen a reduction in on-road transportation emissions per capita of 29% since 2005. And we know, the population is continuing to grow. So of course, per capita, we're looking at things like the adoption of EVs and hybrids and improved technology. That's mostly where those reductions are coming from. We have had, in 2025, we restored over 4,700 feet of stream along our Powell's Creek waterway. And we've had over 300 households receive energy audit and weatherization assistance through the Community Housing Partners Program as of 2025. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to share a few examples of the case studies that we included in our report. The first one is our renewable natural gas facility at our county landfill. This is really a one-of-a-kind operation in the region. It's an initiative that is a private-public partnership with Opal Fuels, where they are operating a facility at our landfill that captures the gases from decomposition that would, typically at landfills, if the gas is not captured, it would have to be flared. off into the atmosphere. And so they're capturing these gases and cleaning them, scrubbing them to commercial grade natural gas. That is, the same natural gas that can be used in homes. This operation has reduced methane emissions at the landfill by 95%, and is a revenue source for the county. It has also, looking at the overall emissions from our landfill, from 2023 to 2024, it reduced emissions at our landfill by 51%. Next slide, please. Another program that we highlighted is our Reforest PWC program. This program is pretty newly launched and continuing to grow. It's a voluntary program where under our Public Works Department, where the county partners with private property owners to convert land into long-term native forests. So residents can apply for the program, and at no cost, the county comes out and helps to reforest their property. Next slide, please. We also highlighted environmental education happening in the county. Our library system does a lot of education with residents that come in, particularly around things like pollinator gardens, protecting biodiversity, and waste reduction programs. And we highlighted our school system, who have just excellent environmental education programs, watershed education programs. And they also have pretty advanced energy conservation programs. They announced last year that their energy conservation efforts have helped the schools avoid an estimated $83 million in utility costs since 2012. Next slide, please. Another very important part of our annual report is looking at our greenhouse gas inventory. We use this inventory that COG provides to all of its member localities to help to track our progress towards our county-wide goals. So as we all know, COG provides inventories to member localities every 2 to 3 years. So the latest data that we have is 2023. And so you can see here the inventory data from 2005 to 2023. We have an ambitious goal to reduce emissions by 50% from a 2005 levels by 2030. As you can see here, our emissions have increased by 19% since 2005. However, if you could go to the next slide, please. This is one of the reasons why this report is a really helpful communication tool. We can provide more narrative to the inventory for our community and have more information by sector. And last year, for the first time, COG provided estimates of breaking out data center energy consumption from other commercial buildings. This is particularly impactful for Prince William County's inventory. So this estimation was done at a regional level with the development of the CEEPC, and then the methodology was used as a basis to provide that data at the locality level. And with that information, we're able to provide, again, more context for our local inventory. And it told us that, so looking at our residential building sector, from 2005 to 2023, we've actually seen a decrease in emissions of 28%. During that same time period, we had 37,000 housing units added in the county. And then again, looking at that breakout between non-data center commercial buildings and data center commercial buildings, looking at our non-data center commercial buildings, we saw a reduction in emissions of 29% from 2005 to 2023, at the same time adding 47% total square footage. And then we were able to see that data center emissions account for about 76% of our commercial building sector in 2023. So, through this report, we're able to share some of these successes while also providing a transparent update to our community about the status of our emissions goals. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, through the utility data consolidation effort, we were able to develop the county's first greenhouse gas inventory for our county government operations. And this is really critical for us to begin to track our progress towards our goal of having carbon neutral county government operations by 2050. So we were able to create an inventory for 2023 and 2024. We saw a slight decrease in emissions of 5% over that year. And really the majority of that is due to that renewable natural gas operations coming online. And again, that 50% reduction in our landfill emissions from that facility. Next slide, please. All right, next slide, please. So just a little kind of sneak peek of what's next and what we can expect to accomplish over the next year and included in next year's report. As I mentioned earlier, we have launched the development of a sustainability and resilience comprehensive plan amendment. Again, this is to wrap our climate goals and our community energy and sustainability master plan, as well as all hazards resilience into the county's 20-year plan. We're expecting to bring that plan to the board for adoption by the end of the year. We have, in December, we completed a building electrification study, and we're expecting to begin to implement some of those findings from that study and to integrate them into some of the county's operations. We also just launched the beginning of a net zero emissions building plan. That plan is funded by the CEEPC federal funding, and we're expecting to complete that plan by the end of this year. And the county also just launched the development of a comprehensive flood plan led by our emergency management team. So that will be really helpful for our climate resilience planning. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Is that advancing for you? Oh, sorry, one more back. All right, and these are just some examples of communications that have gone out about our report on our website, some media coverage, and we shot what we call a shorter topics vodcast. Our county does a video podcast with our county executive on different topics, so we're expecting that to be released probably over the next month. All right, next slide. And that's all. Thank you all for your time. I'm not sure if we have time for any questions here.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I was okay. So yes, we have time for questions, although I've eaten up 30 seconds here playing with my buttons. So anybody have any questions that you would like to voice? Members first, please. Or any in the chat? Yes, go for it.
Yeah. Hey, so the landfill renovation project is just super interesting, and I'm curious, we don't have time for it here, but might it be possible, do you have like a separate like summary or just something you could send and follow, some sort of one pager or just a little more information? Because I think I jotted down, I mean, you reduced emissions at the site itself by 95%, and it's become a revenue source for Prince William County. I tried to catch what you were saying, but I'd love to see just a one pager or a little more follow up.
Yeah, so we have in the report, it's a case study. So it's about a page, but I can flip that to you all. And it's reduced emissions by 50%, which captures 95% of the methane.
Ah, got it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was following the slides and was just wondering if there was something a little more, like I'm curious kind of how it came to be.
Yeah.
Was it a local movement? Did somebody come to y'all and propose it? You know what I mean? Like how did, so if there's any like bit of like history, did it require funding, like grant funding or matching funding or, those sorts of questions. I'd love to learn more about sort of how it came to be, if that's information that's easily available.
Yep, I can share that. It is a private public partnership with Opal Fuels is the company. And yeah, I can share some more background on. We have been working with them for a while, and they ramped up the facility a few years ago. So it's kind of a more long-standing relationship. But yeah, I can share more information on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Could I add
other question? Go for it.
Yes. Hi, Randy Freed here. Julia, thanks for the excellent presentation. I was actually the chair of the Sustainability Commission in Prince William County for the first couple of years. I'm currently the vice chair. Wanted to note that there were 3 foundational initiatives that we recommended that made their way into the plan. The first was to build additional capacity among staff. That's something that I saw that there were questions in the chat box for, particularly on communications, because many of the actions that Julia mentioned really require lots of work by citizens and constituents if they're going to be successful. So that's something that's in progress. The second was to use an adaptive management framework. There's lots of uncertainty about how effective each of the individual measures will be. So we suggested developing metrics and a monitoring system. And in many respects, the sustainability report that Julia just described is the first principal product in that adaptive management framework. We really need to understand how successful each measure is and what kind of mid-course corrections are required. And I think that's a piece that's really essential for pretty much all of the regional climate plans. The third was we suggested that for major decisions being made by the Board of County Supervisors, like road projects, like new data centers, that the staff report that accompanies the application include an estimate of what the greenhouse gas implications are, the renewable energy implications, and the resilience implications. That one is still in progress. So those are kind of foundational cross-cutting measures that provide some context for the 25 actions that Julia mentioned. One other point I'll just add is that there's been a lot of progress, as you heard. Nonetheless, we are not on track to hit our 50% greenhouse gas emission reduction goal. My own personal druthers would be that point were made more explicitly. I know that, Julia, you have a lot of stakeholders that need to be satisfied, but largely through the data center trend that you mentioned, 2023 was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of data centers that are in the construction pipeline. By 2030, unless we really require them to bring their own new clean energy, we're going to be 3 or 4 times the greenhouse gas emission levels that we were in 2005. So I think making that point more explicitly would help, and that relates to a later topic on the agenda. But those are my points. Thank you very much.
That's great.
Chair,
Yes.
sorry, Madam Chair, we have just 2 questions from the chat box. They were
Yes.
wondering if Prince William County used a consultant to prepare the report, or how many, and also a question, how many staff are working on these initiatives and the report?
Yeah, so we did not have a consultant working on the report. I have some very talented and hardworking staff who pulled this together, and particularly our newly hired, not over a year now, but sustainability performance manager, Yi Sun, pulled together the majority of this report. And we got a lot of support from our communications office, who really did an excellent job with the design and proofreading and helping us get the word out. And in terms of our number of staff, we, starting off in 2022, was just me, but now we currently have 4 professional staff. We're hiring a climate risk and resilience manager next month. He should be coming on board, so that's 5. And then in our FY27 budget, we have approved an outreach manager. So that person is really going to be able to support these types of reporting and communications as well.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and more importantly, it represents great work on the part of your team and the volunteers in the community. I was particularly struck by bringing in the the environmental stuff into the climate plan, or maybe it's the other way around, but the joining of those two, not just stormwater resiliency, but all of it. I thought that was really interesting. If anybody has any other questions, put them in the chat, and we'll get Julia to get back to you. So moving on, mid-course review report. Ms. Davis from the COG staff will recap the report. She will focus particularly on the comments received during the meeting in March and also afterwards and how they were addressed. If you're a CEEPC member, you got a note from one of the commenters about their comments earlier this week, talking about how they were or were not addressed, and so we'll go through that, and then I would like to thank everyone who participated in providing comments, particularly non-members, because that's a lot. That's a lot of. It really helps to shape the report. We then will just after that we'll discuss the report. No, let me rephrase that. We will discuss accepting the report and what that means and what we might want to see, what advice we might want to give to the staff, and then we will lastly talk about the board presentation and the cover letter from CEEPC to the board, where we as a group can bring up some things that maybe staff wouldn't be bringing up in a technical report. Keeping in mind that this is a staff report, not the CEEPC committee, and that's why the letter, so that we have some more room there to talk about what we think is important. I will let Maya go ahead with the presentation, and we'll take it from there.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. So just to start off with, to remind everybody, we had a full presentation on the full draft mid-course review report at our March meeting, and we held a comment period at that point, and we actually received a large number and variety of comments from a variety of CEEPC members and stakeholders. And we've been coordinating internally across departments in order to respond to these comments. And I'd like to, just thank all the staff that have been working on this. We've been working on this project since January 2025. So I just want to particularly give a shout out to Alyssa Boggs and Carolyn Sherman from our team who have worked closely with me on this work. So an updated report is posted to your meeting materials. It's online, and as Cindy said, we'll be asking you all to accept this report so that we can accept it, so that we can take it to the COG board and raise these important climate issues and next steps to the COG board. Next slide, please. So today we are going to kind of go over some of the high level findings around goals for the report, but we're mainly, as Chair Cindy said, we're going to be summarizing the edits, highlighting the comments and some of the high level comments and responses today. And then at the end, we'll just have some ideas out there on the slides for you to consider as you have this conversation about potential recommendations to the COG board. So again, first we're going to talk about the technical report, and then get to the discussion where you all get to discuss the policy inferences from the data in this technical report. Next slide, please. All right, so the report is, like I was saying, it's a technical report evaluating the past to current trends around the goals. We're also sharing information on other key performance indicators. And then we have this discussion today about possible recommendations to the COG board. At the July meeting of the COG board, Cindy's going to go. She's going to tee up this topic. I'll present on the technical aspects of the report, and then she can bring the policy discussion that you all have here today to the COG board for discussion. Next slide, please. So the key aspects of what we're evaluating are the COG board goals and priorities. And I want to say that we did rewrite the whole, based on all the comments we received, we did rewrite the whole executive summary. So I'm going to highlight that in the next couple slides. And we did kind of rewrite the conclusions based off a lot of these comments. So we're going to kind of highlight that in the next couple slides before we dive into the details of the changes within the report. So what we're really focusing on is the greenhouse gas emission reduction goals of 20% below 2005 levels by 2020, and then 50% below 2005 levels by 2030 for greenhouse gas emission reduction. The 50% goal was adopted by the COG board in 2020, and then they followed up with the identifying electric vehicles as a regional priority towards meeting those goals. And then the year after that, there was a focus on solar rooftops and setting a solar rooftop goal of 250,000 by 2030. And then the next year, the COG board endorsed a goal of maintaining a minimum tree canopy of 50% coverage for the region. And so the report really focuses on how we're doing towards those three goals in addition to the other key performance indicators. Next slide, please. So this slide is the slide I would like you all to very much focus on, and we can come back to it later. So we sent the updated report to you all 1 week ago, and there has been a lot of additional comments and discussions. And so you have the report in the package. We didn't make any changes in the last week to that report. However, this slide is identifying ways based off of all the conversation and comments back and forth over the last week via email. We are suggesting strengthening some of the language in the executive summary, the conclusions, and throughout the report where we say these types of things. So basically, the executive summary summarizes the findings around these goals. And what we're doing in the red language is adding some additional qualifier language to help understand where we're at in these goals. So as of 2023, we're at 20% below 2005 levels, and that meets the 2020 goal. But what we wanted to add was that we're about 40%, as of 2023, we're 40% towards meeting that 2030 goal. There's also been a lot of comments and interest on the uptick between 2020 and 2023. And so we wanted to qualify that because there was questions around that. There's a 6% uptick in emissions from 2020 to 2023. And that's due to increases in commercial energy intensity, and that includes increases in data centers, as well as the bounce back from the temporary drops we experienced during the pandemic. Then around solar rooftops, we specifically say we're at 93,000 systems as of 2024, and that's about 37% towards that 2030 goal of 250,000 systems. And then as of 2021, we're at 50% tree canopy, and that is equivalent to the regional goal of 50%, but recent trends in canopy law show that threatens our ability to stay at 50%. The report now states in the executive summary and conclusions that without accelerated action and shift in some of these trends, we may not be able to meet these goals, or we may fall short of these goals. And what we'd like you all to do when you accept the report is to also consider accepting these changes in red and deciding if you want stronger language in that last kind of bullet there, instead of saying we may not meet our goals, that we are unlikely to meet our goals. And so that's a key thing right there. Do we keep the language of we may not meet our goals, or do you want it stronger to say we're unlikely to meet our goals without this accelerated action? So we can come back to this slide, but that's definitely, this language change is something that we'd like you all to consider as you accept the report. All right, so next slide, please. So again, there was a lot of perspectives and questions about that's, it's great, we got to 20% below 2005 levels, but what exactly is happening between 2020 and 2023? So we've added language in this. We did some initial analysis and we've added language to this report. There was interest in specifically stating what percent of emissions are from data center electricity consumption. So we've added that into the report. 11% of total emissions are estimated to be from data centers as of 2023. We had comments that say, please, like not just in the language of the report, please put this in the chart. We also have had comments in the recent past that have said, please don't put that in the chart. So, so we've had a lot of different opinions and comments around this. The report does state that 11% of total emissions are from data centers, that the uptick from 2020 to 2023 is in part due to the pandemic, and in part due to data centers. So we are going to dive into that a little bit more in the next slide. So in the report that you all saw last time, we have this contribution analysis, this waterfall chart on the right, comparing emissions from the base year of 2005 to 2023. And we always look at it from the base year to the most recent inventory. And what that says is that the number, in the red bars going up, the third top driver of increasing emissions is from increased commercial electricity energy use or energy use intensity. And that includes energy use increases from data centers. But what we were able to do is we were able to test out this tool to try to tease out that 2020 to 2023 bump a little bit better. And when we analyzed 2020 to 2023, we were able to show that actually the increase in commercial electricity energy use intensity is actually the #1 driver of greenhouse gas increases between 2020 and 2023. The report now also calls out that between 2020 and 2023, data centers increased from about 30 million square feet to 54 million square feet. And then then we talk about the pandemic bounce back. The modeling shows that, the #1 reason is that commercial electricity energy use intensity. The #2 and #3 reason are more pandemic related bounce backs of increased VMT per person and air passenger travel. And globally, as well as in Maryland, the estimates have been that there was a one-time temporary drop in emissions of around 4 to 5%. So we call that out as well, that it's not just COG region, it's not just the broader states, it's globally, there was a one-time drop in 2020 emissions, and we've seen some of that bounce back. So next slide, please. We also added the goal line to the COG board goal of 250,000 systems in our solar growth chart here, which was a request. So this shows kind of where we're at and how far we need to go by 2030 now. Next slide, please. So there was also comments about the green building trends and the green building chart, and there was a request so we look at a lot of the third-party certifications across the region, like LEED and Energy Star and Green Globes, et cetera. And one comment pointed out that there are now a lot of projects from an organization called BREEAM, So that's the Building Research Establishment Environmental Assessment Method. It's a global third-party certification that just really in the last few years has started to trickle into our region and has seen pretty good growth in this certification. And so we were able to add that to the chart. There are about 50 BREEAM certified projects in the region as of now. So that was really exciting to be able to dig into that and see that growth there. And now that is reflected in the report. Next slide, please. Again, for the request to put a goal line on some of these charts, this is the COG board goal related to tree canopy. And so we have data from 2014, 2018, and 2021 from the Chesapeake Bay Network that pretty much shows we were just above the goal, and now we're hovering right at that 50% goal. And we know that they are analyzing, I believe it's 2024 is the next year that they're analyzing, but that data won't be out for some time. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide just kind of sums up some of the other comments that we received and how we responded to them. So there was a lot of questions about forecasting. We did add additional language in the report about the CEEPC's 2030 plan for the region, as well as our comprehensive climate action plan for the full MSA and their forecasting, and refer back to those plans related to that forecasting. There were a couple updates to the renewable portfolio standard language that was provided by some stakeholders. There was a request to add NGBS, the National Green Building Standard. It's another green building database. They don't have that data publicly available online. And we reached out to this group to ask for certifications, and we have not received a response from them. So we weren't able to incorporate that into this report at this time. But as we update that green building database, we'll certainly continue to reach out and try to get that data from them in the future. There were lots of comments asking for updates on some of the local highlights, which we've made to the report. It was asked to add language around TPB goals, the Transportation Planning Board, and modeling. This is a COG board report related to COG board goals. And the COG board goals are different than the Transportation Planning Board goals. The COG board goals are 50% reduction in emissions by 2030 across all sectors. And TPBs is more focused on 50% just for transportation. They analyze just on-road in a report called the Climate Change Mitigation Study. And because they're evaluating towards those more aggressive goals, it's not an apples to apples comparison to really just pop into kind of compare it to the COG board goals that we're evaluating in this report. So that wasn't something that we were able to do. There was a request to update the VMT graph that we have in the report, and we did that because new data was available for 2024. There was a request for including progress towards the COG board housing targets. And that is something where a separate study would be needed to assess progress on COG's housing targets. And so we just don't have that data or information to include in that report. And a study like that would fall under our Department of Community and Economic Services. And that would be something typically that the Housing Directors Committee or the COG Region Forward Coalition would lift up to the board to support that work. There was a request for waste per capita as an indicator. And we did dig into this data and pull a lot of data related to this. And what we found is that there's really incomplete data available. And with the data available at this time, we just can't include that in the report. It would take, much longer and several months worth of research and working with the local governments to make sure we had apples to apples, data to look at from across the region. So that's just not something we're able to incorporate at this time. But with that, we'll move to the next slide. And that kind of sums up a lot of the highlights of comments and how we responded to them. And something that we are working on that you all asked for was more of an update, taking all this data and information, updating it into a dashboard. So we have a kind of static regional dashboard on our website, and you all requested it as part of this project to update it with local and regional data and make it more interactive. So the picture on the images on the top right here are of COGS crime dashboard, and on the left you can kind of see the black boxes. That's like a list of like local jurisdiction names, and then along the bottom is like the topic, like green building, or that sort of thing. We could put topics down there, and then you could click on a chart, and which you can see on the right. So you could click a couple jurisdictions and say, I want to look at energy, electricity trends, and a chart on the right would pop up. So that's kind of what we're starting to work on now that the report is almost finished. We're also most of the inventory work happens in a tool called ClearPath, and they're upgrading it to a 2.0 version. And what we have to do there, we actually have, every time we do an inventory year, it's 26 inventories for local and regional inventories that are in there. So we have completed a total of 156 inventories across the years for our local jurisdictions. And so it's really going to take us till the end of the year probably to transition and re-upload all of these inventories into ClearPath 2.0. It's AR6 global warming potential values that are in 2.0. So we have to do a lot of quality control checking on the new estimates for all the inventories across all the years. So we need to do all of that. There's a basic dashboard for the region that will pop up as a part of this. Each jurisdiction, if they have an ICLEI membership, they can create a local dashboard after we get all of this in here. I know we have a couple jurisdictions that are working on that right now. And what we suggest, based off of everything we've learned in the mid-course review, is that we do a 2026 round of inventories for all of our communities, because the data is 2023 that we're looking at right now. And 2026, I think, will give us an updated picture of how we're doing towards those 2030 goals. The idea is we would start it in January 2027. A draft would be available in 2028, but that also depends on making sure we have the right staff and resources to be able to do that, because there was so much interest and so many requests for changes on this inventory. We had 4 staff members, 3 staff members and working with me on the inventories. And then in order to do a data center estimate, we had brought on a consultant for help for that. So the timeline does very much depend on staff resources that we have to complete these inventories. Next slide. Okay, so this gets to the policy discussion, the part where you guys get to chat and talk. And so all this is in the next 2 slides is some ideas from some staff brainstorming for your consideration. So it's possible that if you want, Cindy could go to the board in July and say, hey, we want the board to recommit to an accelerated implementation of the regional climate plan strategies. While we might not be on the right track for all of these metrics we look at in this plan, we do think that the climate plan has the right strategies in there. We just need to accelerate action on implementation. And kind of presenting this idea, we need actions across all sectors. We need to look at advancing implementation in some priority areas like solar to meet that solar goal, for instance, and address really, some common challenges that are impacting our communities now. There has been a lot of concern that we've been hearing about energy affordability that could be of interest. Of course, you all have talked a lot about data centers and being able to, decarbonize or electrify our homes and vehicles. And those are kind of like major common themes that we have heard come up. So we put those out there on the slide. And then if we go to the next slide, I think that this that last slide we just looked at, that's kind of some key recommendations, but then we just provided a slide here of like some very sector specific ideas and information to kind of dig into it a little bit more, like you know, and under topics like buildings, transportation, and trees. So for buildings and power, you know, renewable energy and developing the partnerships, more partnerships to install large scale solar, for instance, and doing more advocacy at the for state renewable portfolio standards and at the PJM level. We've done a lot of state advocacy, not as much at the PJM level to be able to move these solar projects forward. Again, energy affordability and what type of, you know, policies and solutions that local governments could do to support this effort, or how we need to advocate to the states or different groups to support energy affordability. Continuing to coordinate on, you know, best management strategies and advocating to the right folks around data centers, transportation electrification, and what can we do to maintain that 50% tree canopy. So with that, I will stop there. So again, just described a lot of the changes we made to the technical report, and looking forward to your conversation on the policy inferences there. Madam Chair, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the with a very informative presentation. And I deeply appreciate COG staff efforts to respond to comments and to refine how the data is presented, not to mention the data analysis in the first place, but how we express what this means. And I appreciate that very much. What I'd like to do with the group is, first of all, I think we're going to cut into the 11:30 time slot for updates and reports. So if you were planning to talk then, you might make it brief, because we're going to go over on this section. I can see it already. And I think this is important. So I would like to have discussion first, then go back to slide 5 and vote on whether we want to strengthen the language in those two ways, ask for any other language proposals, and then vote to accept on accepting the report. Then come back to the policy discussion, although I'm sure some of it will come up as we discuss the report. So first, comments on the updated report, comments on yeah. So raise your hand, or I see Randy. Anybody else? I'm trying to get the full. I'm not getting the full group.
Yeah, so far I see
Okay, so only Randy so far, and also you can signal in the chat. So Randy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. First, I'll reiterate what Chair DeBala said. Thanks for all of the hard work on this, and especially all the responsive improvements to the comments that you guys received. I just want to make 2 points. First, I think we clearly want to say that it's unlikely that we will achieve the goal rather than we may not. It's very important to speak plainly, and it doesn't help to sugarcoat. Second, I suggest that rather than using the phrase accelerate implementation, we really need to be speaking more along the lines of expand. I think the risk of saying that we're going to accelerate implementation is that the COG board thinks that, well, if we just scale up the EV access, the solar rooftops, and the tree canopy, that we have a hope of getting there. We don't. There are two 800-pound gorillas that are kind of the sine qua non for achieving the goals. The first is getting as much emission reduction as we can through the transportation sector, which I think means turning the dial up on everything that was in the TPB ICF report that came out a couple years ago on how we can reduce emissions in that sector. Given that it's the single biggest sector that we have, it's clear that just EV expansion doesn't get us there. So that's the first 800-pound gorilla. The second is, I don't think we can get to the 50% goal unless we get data centers to use clean energy. I think addressing large load customers, that's good, but it's not going to be that meaningful to the decision makers here. It's really quite simple. Unless we get them to use zero carbon electricity, given how much they're expanding their load, we don't get there. So I would say rather than accelerate, the key phrase should be expand, and the expansion needs to include those two components: a more complete transportation strategy and accelerating use of clean energy dramatically from data centers. Thank you.
Next. Oh, surely someone must have something to say.
I threw my hand up, but I didn't know
I
where I
didn't
was.
see.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it, Sarah.
Okay. I got to figure out how to put my hand down.
I got to figure out how to juggle all these
Okay.
inputs. I'm not doing a great job.
I think let me first just acknowledge staff's intensive efforts here to respond to all of the areas that required response. I don't want to skip over that. I do appreciate the efforts made to sort of incorporate and pre-address a lot of these. And Maya is acknowledging sometimes the staffing limitations and the database updates that go into all of this work. I do appreciate that and hear it and see it. I want to second, I think Randy started to go here, but I just want to further lift it up. I think we have to find a way to separate data centers more repetitively or discreetly throughout the report, because I think what I sense is a desire to highlight progress, right? I mean, we want to do that and we want to be positive where we are headed in the right direction. And so when we include it, we sort of need, if we separate data centers out, not just as commercial buildings, but as the significantly different user and impact, item that they are, it will allow us, like what I saw in the Prince William County report today was so beautiful, is they've added, 37,000 housing units, but lowered their emissions. They've expanded 47% square footage, but lowered their emissions. So I appreciate the desire to tell that story in the mid-course report. But I think when you blend data centers with commercial buildings and sort of with development broadly, it allows for the numbers to improve, but it's hiding what's really going on a bit, at least to me as a layperson sometimes. And so I think to the extent we can separate them out, because they are such dramatic outliers. And the other thing is, I do appreciate the call out in the report about the impact they've had in the last few years, but the approval pipeline in the next 5 years is also sort of dramatic and important. And so this isn't so much like a problem that has happened or a challenge that has happened that we have to reckon with. It's an issue that is ongoing and already in a pipeline of approvals. So I wish I could pinpoint it, I guess, can we go back to the slide that sort of that responses? It was sort of a list of issues raised and response. This one, yeah. And I was trying to figure out where in here, you know what I mean, could fit in this comment. But if there's a way for us, and again, I appreciate the changes proposed in the executive summary that sort of gives the percentage of the uptick, identifies where some of it is happening. I would just ask us to go one step further and really highlight. And then the other thing that I just wanted to say on the data center front, we talk so much about energy. I don't know the water, like the impacts to water and the volume of usage and the long-term impacts on sort of the water cost supply. It's something that I just am, as a layperson, again, I'm sort of increasingly aware of and exposed to. So the other little, I know, it's already been addressed. The housing targets. I just wanted to be a voice of saying, if there's a footnote, if there's an addendum comment, if there is a reference, I am all for that, because I think land use is what so many of us actually have a lot of control over, and land use around housing. And so I think as an elected who looks to documents like this to support votes and decisions and programming, I would love us to find a way through a footnote or an addendum or somewhere to comment on the relationship between transit-oriented development, housing, and our climate goals. I'll pause there, and I'm sorry if that I don't and maybe
No,
I
that's great.
is it useful? I'm sorry.
Very useful. Very
Okay.
Yeah,
useful. And
and
in the
I can
chat, I
say,
see. Go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I can say that, so we were able to get some, Dominion and Novec, enough data for 2023. But we don't have like all the years of data, and there might be some future resources that give us a little bit more data that we can look at next time, but also there might not be, because even though some data was released for 2023, it's not released for 2024. But I did forget to mention that when we looked at commercial electricity trends, I did add we've had over a 60% increase in commercial electricity over the time period since 2005. And I did mention a qualifier, is how that includes data centers, but we're not able to get data across all the years. We're really just able to get our most solid data for 2023. So we don't have like all of that data to share. We do have a little bit of data from the local jurisdictions. It's 2025 data. It's not 2026 data, but about kind of a little bit about the pipeline of square footage of data centers coming. So we could add like a sentence about that from the information that we do have.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
and your memo and what's brought up to the COG board, it could bring up this housing target issue, but I do feel like if it's brought up by CEEPC, it will be passed over to the housing directors from the board. I feel like that will happen, because the COG board will probably say, well, what do the housing directors say about this?
Mm-hmm. As they should. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't say it. Anyway, so other comments I see in the chat that Rich Dooley agrees with Sarah on the data centers. Other comments, questions on the report?
I believe Councilmember Fritz might want to say something.
It was, I'm sorry, Councilmember Fritz, I did see that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
thank you. And yes, thank you to staff. This definitely, thank you for outlining how, it does sound like a very laborious process. So thank you for pulling this all together. We really appreciate the work that you're doing. I don't think saying, let me pull up the exact verbiage, but I don't, perhaps I'm being too cynical here. I don't think I am, but I don't think unlikely is strong enough language. Like, I think I don't see it happening. Unlikely to, because it's not just saying without accelerated, because we're decelerating. We're going, based on the trend of 2020 to 2023, we're decelerating. We're going backwards. And so so I think mathematically, if we're just talking about, regardless of, the thoughts on data centers, just the trend that we're looking at, there is no path without this action. Like, I don't think we can be any more explicit than to say that without a deliberate change in policy, this will not happen. It's not, I have been, I started as a youth activist in the climate space, and I remember, back then, saying that, we're blowing through all of our targets globally, right? And I understand we can't address the global circumstances, but what we can address here is letting our constituents know, and letting the COG board know that we are extraordinarily unlikely to meet these goals, barring some form of action, because change in action and change in direction. Because by the time we get more data, it will be almost too late to effectuate the change in the direction that we would want to see. And I'm not saying that, we drop dead in 2030. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that if we set a target for 2030, we have to be accurate and we have to be precise about what we're saying. And I don't think that we are unlikely to meet the target, even if we were able to turn around the data center issue right now. I think we would be unlikely to. So I think to say that without accelerated action, I think it's almost impossible.
Okay.
Barring some external trend changing, that would be completely outside of our understanding. And maybe the only thing I would suggest is maybe put a mathematical comparison of how much the decrease was during COVID and how much other large policy interventions, and I'm saying extraordinarily large policy interventions, like large modal shifts in transportation, would be required to offset the impact of data centers, because that's what we're really talking about here in my understanding.
Okay. Thank you. So we have two more. We have Matt and Rachel.
Good morning. This is Matt Myers from Fairfax County.
Good morning, Matt.
Thanks. Good morning. Thank you. Just want to thanks to COG staff. It is an amazing report and responses. Just building, not to pick on data centers. One challenge that is kind of new to us here is the big push of bring your own power for data centers is bringing. We have a proposal. We're looking at a natural gas fuel cell power generation on site for a proposed data center. This is all new to us, and we're trying to understand from a land use perspective how that is going to be managed, as well as how that affects our inventory. Natural gas fuel cell is efficient, but it's going to draw a lot of natural gas within the county, where a lot of the data we have is not only within the county, but what's being used on the grid. So I think just the challenges of how we track that, how we manage that from a land use perspective, as well as how we track that in future assessments going forward.
Thank you. Rachel, did you want to say something other than what you put in the chat?
Oh, yeah. No, I was just writing that down because it seemed to be sort of clear and might be helpful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the transit-oriented development, because as we know, transit's a huge portion of what we need to squeeze, and that the region has the adopted target for most housing to go into transit-oriented walkable activity centers. And I hear the issue of a separate study needing to be done to assess progress, and that it couldn't be included in this report. But my question is, are we planning to do this separate study already? Is it already on the books and planned to be done? And if it is not, can a mid-course review report recommend that it be added to the COG work plan directly?
So no, it's not in progress. It's not on the books. It's not officially going to happen. I know the housing director would be happy to do it with the budget and resources. The technical report wouldn't state that, but the memo and to the board and the discussion with the board on policies and next steps that you guys want to see, that could be put in there.
Okay, anybody else? Last call for comments on the report. Going once, going twice. Especially comments that disagree with what's been said already.
I had a comment. My name is Opelwa with Washington Gas Light Company. I wanted to understand how we are looking at the different sectors and how each of those are contributing to the goal reduction, as well as the mention around natural gas use for fuel cell, how you're capturing the much lower reduction in both usage as well as emissions.
So the report does show the trends in natural gas residential and commercial or non-residential, and it does show from 2005 through 2024 some decreases in natural gas consumption over that time period, and talks about the impacts of weather on the year-to-year kind of changes in that. But this particular report, it just talks about the trends. It doesn't talk about the strategies or the next steps or get into fuel cells. And I don't think our plan, our 2030 plan really gets into that much detail of fuel cells either.
Thank you.
And I think that would be a conversation that you two could continue offline, because I think I know there's more to that. We aren't able to deal with that right this minute. So please do. I'm encouraging you to email Maya and make that connection. So what I'm hearing is generally support for the language. Can we go back to slide 5? We are on slide 5. Sorry. Generally support for the language here, with perhaps a couple of tweaks. Maya had mentioned saying more about data centers. I would like to say it's primarily increases from data centers. That's the response to commercial energy intensity. So that's sort of one set of changes is the first big bullet. The second set of changes is the unlikely to. I'm hearing people want to do that. And the third set of changes that got proposed today by Randy to add expand, not just accelerate, to the sentence about whether we're going to meet our targets. And I would suggest that breaking that down into transportation and data centers is something that we do in the policy memo, rather than try to have the staff do a whole lot of rewriting. But I could be flexible about that. So in order to move this along, I would like to take this in 3 pieces. Well, yes, in 3 pieces, and then a final vote to accept the report, if that works for everybody.
Sorry,
Maya?
Madam Chair, also there was some support for adding language without deliberate change of policy, that the goal won't happen. And we don't have to.
Well, yeah, okay, all right.
Every line to line, but we could do the unlikely,
big
the
enough.
Expand, deliberate
Yeah.
change in policy.
Okay.
Like we can work that language.
All right. So do we need 4 votes, or is there anybody who objects to making any of these changes? Let's put it that way. Let's start with the ones that are written on the slide, including is unlikely to. If so, I'm going to take a hand vote. I'm going to take a vote. And so first, any abstentions and any please stop. Any abstentions and hearing none, seeing none? Okay, any no? No, you don't want to make these changes, including is unlikely to. Okay, so hearing no objections and hearing no abstentions, I'm going to assume everybody else is voting yes, and so we'll make these changes. Then we have the suggested 2 changes to add the word expand and to include the phrase about without deliberate change in policy. Is that what you said, Maya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so take them together. So I heard a first from Randy. I heard a second from Sarah. She actually started to second it earlier, but we'll count that. And so again, So the two changes to strengthen the language, to add expanded. So it would say yet accelerated, to accelerate and expand efforts, and it would say without a deliberate change in policy, the goals may not be made. So a much stronger statement. So anybody abstaining? Anybody voting no? Okay, recognizing that we are pushing the boundaries of what is a COG staff report versus a COG committee policy, the additions will be made. Thank you for that. So now finally, accepting the report with these changes and with knowing that we will be putting a lot of what we just agreed on into the presentation to the COG board. So anybody abstaining on accepting the report? Anybody voting no to not accept the report with the changes? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. No hands up. This is your last chance to vote no. Okay, thank you. We will consider all the others as having voted yes, and so the report is accepted by the board by the committee with the changes made, and knowing that we will be bringing the policy issues to the board. So let's turn to the slide with the board recommendations, wherever that went. Slide 13. So the hope is to make these 3 key points with the changes we just discussed: the accelerate and expand action, advanced implementation, and making that point that if we don't make some of these policy changes, it's not going to happen. And then I would add to 3. That's where I would put the discussion that we had about making the connections with the Transportation Planning Board goals and actions, and where I would make the request to strengthen the connection with the housing goals and policies, and recommending that they consider a study. So I think that fits in 3. Am I going too fast here? Comments on these 3 points as I've just amended them? If I went to the COG board and said basically these 3 things with a little more detail, would that work for everybody? Because this is our chance as a committee to make these recommendations that things need to change a little bit here. Yes, agreeing. Thank you through the okay. Anybody have anything else they would like to say about this? Pro, con, adding anything? I'm just checking my notes, making sure I didn't leave anything out. Separating out data centers doesn't come through here very loud and clear, but we have already made some changes in the report to the degree that we can. Yeah, so again, mitigating impacts of large loads, especially data centers. Yeah, it is in here. Okay, so anybody
Cindy,
have? Yes.
Cindy, I'm sorry, this is Sarah. Just
Go for it, Sarah.
It the last one that you just, as you were reading, the serving large load growth, including data centers, is there maybe an opportunity just to tweak that language there by saying serving large load growth, separating out impacts from data centers, sort of just indicating
or focusing on, or
focusing on, just rather than say including, because that's kind of the problem, right? A little bit that it sort of includes them. If we take out including and switch it to something more like especially, or separating or acknowledging, data centers specifically or something.
personally, I agree. I actually did that in my head.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was just trying
Okay.
to, because I realize sometimes our conversation doesn't appear in the words, right? You know, and so
Right,
I was
right.
trying to incorporate that.
Okay, I see a couple of thumbs up. Thank you for your patience with this, but it is important to me to get your views right when I'm going to the board. So it's just taken a little longer than it might otherwise.
And this is
Yes.
Frankie. Yeah, I similar to that. I think something that could maybe be teased out a little more under decarbonizing homes and vehicles. I do think transit-oriented development and modal shifts are important, right? It's not just, having the same number of vehicle miles in electric vehicles. Like we
Right.
really need to change the underlying mix as well.
Yeah, that agreed. Right. Not just the TPB recommendations. I hear you. Mhm.
Cindy, would that go in as its own separate
That's a good question.
bullet, or would it be saying the decarbonizing homes and vehicles differently? Right, because I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes they get conflated.
Right, because
Or would you,
decarbonizing.
sorry, Cindy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I said, or like this issue of the transit-oriented development, housing and modal shifts, does that go under number 1 across all sectors? Like I feel like it could be number 1 or number 3, really.
Staff have an
But
opinion? I'm sorry, somebody else started to talk.
I was just going to say the way one is listed, it's a question rather than right. So
Yeah,
it would
it is
be
a
hit
question.
1 and it would be called out if it's in number 3.
I like calling it out and I like it in number 3. So maybe
Okay.
there's another bullet because decarbonizing vehicles only goes part of the way. And decarbonizing homes, it's locating homes and getting people out of vehicles. All right. Anything else? I see some chat comments. We've got them, I think.
Quick question. Do you track not just VMT, but ownership? Because you mentioning whether vehicle mile traveled versus how many vehicles per household, for instance, if that has been tracking up, that could be a really good story to just specifically owning in on decarbonizing vehicles. Because I think for homes, it's really about the grid on the system, not necessarily the homes themselves or the buildings generally. So I might just say decarbonizing vehicles is the bigger challenge here, especially with the data. And then basically saying reducing, I don't know what the language would be, but reducing non or reducing carbon intensive vehicle usage. That might be the real key here.
Okay. Does anybody on staff know the answer to the question here about vehicle ownership data? That's not the bigger point, but if anybody knows.
Kind of. It's pretty complex. We do VIN decoding, but it's at a pretty high level. So we have, and it's actually not really linked to the household. It's really just raw VIN decoding. So we really kind of know the vintage of the fleet. We know how old people are keeping their cars longer. And we have an older fleet. We do see the penetration of electric vehicles. We might be able to track it down to like zip code level, but I don't think we really get into the household. But we'd have to check with our transportation folks.
Okay, so broad scale, not really at a level to be able to shape a policy around it right now. Okay.
And just
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
the title needs some tweaking too. It's not just recommitting and accelerating implementation of the EV access, solar rooftops, tree canopy. It's expanding. And I think clarifying the two gorillas that we have, that we need to do everything we can on the transportation sector. And it's not serving large load growth because I think key decision makers are not going to understand what that means. It's getting data centers to use clean energy. I think that makes it clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
I agree.
Your students are an interesting challenge we have, which is we actually know that the data center sector is procuring clean energy at a scale that's really changing the market. But we can't really account for that. And just as a side announcement, we just yesterday brought on board a person from MIT, Alison Ruffo, who was on the call, and her research project this summer is going to be just that, looking at the data center sector and trying to make a little bit more sense out of, how much clean power they're actually putting on the grid and what it's doing to kind of a larger decarbonization effort.
That's great. Remind me to mention that's
And to the point about clean energy, I think, all along we've known that particularly, getting the carbon out of the grid and getting more solar and storage on the grid has a massive impact because it affects everybody, including the data center. One thing that, and that's in that the second bullet or the first bullet under point 2, explore new partnerships to fund and deploy solar. I think there's increasing appetite with our utility partners in the region, that they're actually actively looking at, how can we own and operate solar at a scale that they're currently not doing, because they're facing the need to meet the state RPS standards. And one of the ways to do that is for them to own and operate the solar themselves. And so there is a potential play where our local government members can start looking a little bit more aggressively at forming some of these partnerships to actually get solar installed and realize it.
Jeff's sound is not very clear, but I think everybody got the gist of that. Okay, other comments before we move to a vote to accept this? Well, I guess we don't need a vote. So
yeah, we could just take all these comments to draft the memo and then work that out with you post meetings, Cindy.
Right, I'm taking lots of notes, and you can always email me individually between now and then, and we'll continue the discussion. Fritz, were you about to say something?
Yeah,
I had.
Go ahead. I'll go first.
One at a time. Yeah. Fritz first.
I will say that I agree with Randy. We need data centers to use clean energy, but we also, I don't think it should be lost that slowing the growth of the data center sector overall also is something that we need to look at. If we're being honest about trying to hit these targets, it's not just having them switch, but we need to decarbonize the energy demand that we already have without adding more to the grid too. So, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that we're, as a committee, adopting a moratorium. I'm just saying that or supporting a moratorium, but we need to at least be honest that is an option. That slowing the growth of the sector is one of the ways that we can balance out the demand and the growth.
So I'll be interested to hear, after we get all done with this, to hear the update on the legislative stuff, because some of the bills that were considered, I think I've just lost track of where I am. Some of the bills that were considered were dealing with that. So when we get to the legislative overview, let's hold that thought till then. Okay, and then the other person who started to speak before Heidi.
Yes, I wanted to ask if we could add a fourth point to the common challenges, and probably it's embedded in affordability, or maybe it should be stood alone. I think Council Member Fritz just acknowledged that in a way about the competing goals and their impacts, or what we commonly call energy trilemma, or perhaps a quadlemma in this case, just acknowledging that some of this may create competing challenges. For instance, you might increase the use of solar, but then inadvertently affect the tree canopy goal or land use changes. So things like that, just saying there has to be a balance and how that might affect, for example, affordability or reliability or any other resilience issues that might be, I think that's something to really, really take into account.
I like that point, and I think that's why we need the board. Yeah. That's good. Okay. I see where that could go. Yes.
Cindy, I have a comment.
Yes.
Okay, this is Alan Hugh from College Park.
Yes.
So I think what we need to be doing is at least acknowledging that we need to set policies in the sense of think of data centers as the early automobiles. They were highly pollutant, and over time we created emissions requirements. I think we need to start setting some emission requirements for data centers to, set the goals for them, because they're not going to go there on their own. And if you're going to be doing dirty energy, high energy, well, that's not good enough. We can't, we shouldn't be saying stop all data centers. We should prioritize data centers that have a goal, just a goal to either goal to start with or meets the goals of acceptable rate of energy use and energy source. Because right now there are no goals, there's no standards.
There's no nothing. Yeah. Again, let's listen to what came out of the legislative sessions as a start on that, because acknowledging that it's mostly at the land use level, not at the state level, but I think some of the legislation tried to tackle that. Good thought. Any other thoughts?
Well, Madam Chair, if I may interject,
way over time.
Yes, this has been extremely important and valuable, and this is a chance for CEEPC to weigh in verbally before the board meeting on July 22nd, since our next meeting isn't until July 29th. I will say COG's emails and phones remain open for further comment if anybody didn't get a chance to get their points across today. But I did want to do this time check. We're 20 minutes away from the conclusion, and we do need to get committee approval today on the work program and budget for next year. So if I may ask your permission, can we move that item ahead, even though I know we want the data center legislation? And then secondly, it's up to you and the committee members if you want to run a bit over past noon. So putting those two things out there, and thank you, Bill Egger, for your patience.
Thank you for, I did kind of lose track of that one here. So yes, let's please seek everybody's indulgence in switching agenda item 5 to be number 4, and ask Bill Egger's permission to do that if he's okay with that. Sorry. We will ask the member and committee updates to submit written stuff so it can be circulated. And just a show of hands, if we go 15 minutes over, who has to leave at exactly noon? Staff, help me keep track of this. If you must leave at noon, let us know now by raising your hand or putting it in the chat. And if there's enough of you, then we will end at noon. Staff? I see one.
Yeah, if you got 4 or 5 people who need to leave at noon, and I can try
Okay.
to make the work program budget. I'll try to fly through it real quick to leave some time for Bill, because I know folks want to hear and I'm assuming my audio is better because I switched the microphone. Good,
Yes,
good.
Yes.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool.
All right, so we're gonna
yes.
switch, and I'm sorry that I have not been on top of the time today, because it's coming out of the work plan, and that's not that's not ideal, given all the work we just created for you in our discussion. So go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
Jeff, and take it away.
Yeah,
Yes.
and just to, and I'm not
And-
going to get into the weeds on this, but just a slight preview. Our program is facing a fairly substantial cut in the revenue that we get starting in fiscal year 27, and it's highly likely we'll see additional cuts in the future. And there's a bunch of reasons for that I won't get into, but just be aware that we're going to be, having to do, I guess, less with less. We're going to probably need to look at certain areas where we may need to cut, but at this point, we'll do what we can to maintain our level of service with a little bit lower budget. So, next slide.
Jeff, can you?
Can I what?
Jeff, can you just say briefly?
You're muted.
It's not that COG itself has cut you, it's that federal funding and other funding sources are shrinking.
No, it's actually COG. It's related to.
Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's something that we'll need to look at in the coming months, and we've already started doing a little bit of work here to kind of assess, what the implications are. And it has a lot to do with our ownership of the building and the fact that we took on more share of the ownership of the building, and we have some pretty significant vacancies, and we had a major investment in our office renovation, and all that kind of flows through what our CFO needs to do with the COG funds and COG member funds. And so it's kind of across the board, we're looking at, a haircut, as it were. So anyway, so our work program budget really supports all of our work around the Climate and Energy Action Plan. It's really focused on meeting the region's greenhouse gas reduction goals. And we talked a lot about that just now, and helping you all get your work done, because that's where really the work happens in this region is at the local level and the state level. So, and we're always trying to build your capacity. So next slide. Wanted to say that, we made a lot of accomplishments. Looking back at the year, it's actually pretty awesome what our team put together, with all of the great local climate leaders. And of course, we were all together back in March at the big 100th meeting, and just really almost brought me to tears to see how many great leaders we have in this region and all the excellent work you're doing. And we're doing our best to help you guys keep up that great work. And so, this is a list of all the accomplishments we made this year. You just heard on number 3 there, the mid-course review, huge effort with Maya, and she was doing that while she was also leading her team to do all of the local greenhouse gas inventories for 2023. So just a major work. We had ICF supporting us on the CEEPC, the Comprehensive Climate Plan. We've launched the data center forums. We've just yesterday held the 3rd data center forum on land use. And sure enough, even during the land use, there was quite a bit of focus continuing on the whole energy piece. We, of course, do our Climate Energy Awards. We completed our EJ Toolkit. Maya's managing a really cool electric vehicle charging infrastructure grant from Federal Highways. We're supporting a lot of our local efforts, incredible work going on across the region at the local level on climate energy planning and implementation. I'm excited. Hopefully in August, September, we'll be highlighting at Union Station 2 of our, I guess we've done 7 of the locomotives now, converting them to clean power, clean diesel, but basically cuts their fuel consumption almost in half. So the good success story there. We continue to work with the military on some of their resilience work. And Heidi's continuing to lead the tree canopy work. And we were able to do a kind of a reassessment of our progress using the Chesapeake Bay program data. And one of the things that we've been involved with since I think 2010 is a Mid-Atlantic Climate Leaders Network. And EPA had been running that, but as you can imagine, under the new administration, they had to stop work on that. So COG, with the support of ICLEI and WRI, relaunched it. So we're continuing the collaboration across the Mid-Atlantic, the notion being that we cannot solve the climate crisis alone. We really need our partners in the Mid-Atlantic and all across the country to step up and do good work. So that's a great program. So next slide. These are all the program areas. You should be familiar with them all. Most of the work revolves around the climate energy, but we also do recycling solid waste and regional forestry within climate and energy. Support this committee, the BAC committee, do a lot of work on the energy piece, some work on adaptation resiliency. I'd like to see more done there. Support our public advisory committee. We also have a little bit of budget in there to do member support for the COG board and other things, and also to develop the work program. We also have kind of standalone climate energy projects. So like the mid-course review would fall into that. And then we have support for our external projects like the locomotives project and the military work. Next slide. And so these are our budget sources. We are really blessed in this region with the Regional Environment Fund. Not all of our COG members contribute, but those that do allow us to raise about close to $1 million. And it is dedicated to this work annually. As I said earlier, the area that we're seeing a little bit of a cut is the COG member contributions. Interestingly, I was looking back a couple years ago. We had a bump up, and so the cut really brought us back to what was our was kind of the traditional level of funding that we received, but the risk or the possibility we face is them needing to take even a little bit more out of that 300,000, which could really impact what we're able to do, but not quite sure yet. So we'll keep working on that. And then, of course, all the external grants. Next slide. And so our overarching themes in this work program is to continue to support efforts to accelerate and expand, thank you, Randy, action on reducing emissions across particularly the areas that the COG board wants us to focus on, and to prepare the region to be more resilient. One of the new priority areas, of course, is this whole data center, large growth, and we're ramping up our work there. And as hopefully we'll have time to have you hear from Bill Egger, who has been helping us related to that, particularly as it relates to the state policy and the PJM multi-state kind of subnational policy initiatives that are out there that are really central to what's going to happen in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years on what all this data center stuff's going to mean for the larger emissions and grid issues. Next slide. And so these next few slides just goes through each of the budget program areas. So this is all the work we do in the climate energy policy. So we do our climate energy action plan implementation support. That's where we greenhouse gas emissions inventory work that Maya does, the dashboarding, and the work that CEEPC does. Next slide. The BAC is more of our technical committee for CEEPC, and really focuses on capacity building for your staff, for your sustainability staff, for your buildings energy staff. And so we really focus on bringing them topics and trainings and workshops that helps them do their job better and help you guys meet all your goals. Next slide. Again, all the work we do on energy infrastructure, a lot of it's focused recently on the electric vehicle area, and we've backed off a little bit on the solar. We probably need to ramp that up this year. I think we all kind of went into shock mode with the repeal of the tax credits for that. And so, but we do need to get back into that because there are some good things going on there. And particularly with energy prices going up, solar prices continuing to go down. With solar still being in the money, it makes sense to do all we can on solar. Next slide. Adaptation resiliency, really important area because the impacts are already here, and a lot of the frontline impacts happen at the local level. And so we need to continue to work on building capacity. Interestingly, some of the best work we're doing in the region on resilience is actually coming out of TPB with their whole transportation resilience improvement plan and all the work there. Really incredible to see that happening. Next slide. AgPAC, your public advisory committee, we continue to support them and MWAC also funds AgPAC. In one of their big programs is the Climate Energy Leadership Awards, but they also are, when they meet, take on quite a number of topics that are relevant to this group. Next slide. Again, the work we do to support our vehicle emission reductions and the resilience work with the DoD military folks. Next slide. The support we provide to COG members. Next slide. The solid waste work managed here by John Snar, one of our most popular committees, and really just great work that they do. So we continue to support them. Next slide. In the work of our urban forestry, the tree canopy subcommittee that Heidi manages, and the work she's doing on the tree canopy action plan. Next slide. And that's it. Here's our team. We have to add one more person to the team there for the summer, Allison Rufo, who's going to be working on that data center issue. But yeah, it's great to be able to provide the support. And on behalf of all of our team, we're pleased to do this work, and thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you for buzzing through that. So there are two things here. One is the content of the work, and I'm going to suggest that people email Jeff directly if you have comments on a particular section of the work. And I would like to focus on the money and the approval given the time frame. I apologize once again. So Jeff, do you need us to focus on priorities within the work plan, or do you need us to focus on asking for more money?
Well,
or in other words, approve the 5.9 million, and then if we want to ask for more, that's up to us.
I think given the timing, the most important is a motion, a second, and a vote to approve, just to prove it. That would be what we need right now. I think the larger issue that we discussed as part of the mid-course review, the notion of the work activities that we're doing and what we can do better and more of and expanded and accelerated, that's something that we think about every day, weekends, nights, we dream about it. So that's an ongoing request. We're always looking for ways to do stuff better, more, what you guys need to let us know what you need. Hearing, for instance, from Matt Myers that they're on the verge of finally maybe seeing a commercialized fuel cell in the region. That's big. And if all of the data centers could move to fuel cells, that would be big. And so that's one piece, and that's always, our door is always open. We're always seeking input. The issue of the funding, I think it's likely not going to be very fruitful to talk much about it or do much about it, given what I know is the situation. And I think the situation likely will improve in a few years once we fill the space in our building. Shout out for anyone who knows anyone who's looking for rental space at 777 North Capitol. We're hopeful that we have some tenants that are almost ready to sign. So we'll see, and that'll make a big help. But I think what's more important probably is support for chasing grant funds for bringing in additional resources. That's always the way we can make a good difference is, Maya going out and getting a $3.5 million grant to do EV charging, and the federal grants have dried up substantially, but we're hopeful that there'll be some new pots of money to chase after. My sense is that's a better area to focus is how can we find new resources to replace the ones we're losing, and not to harp on our CFO because she's in a really hard place with our current situation.
Okay. So I would like to hear, so if you have ideas about the work plan or comments or questions, email them to Jeff. Maybe Heidi, could we take a note if we want to talk about the funding issue at the next meeting or not? I'm not sure, but let's just make a note about it because we're not going to get to talk about that right now. Let's do the business that we need to do, and show some support, show some love for the budget here, for the program plan. So can I have a motion from someone to approve this work plan?
So moved. That's Sarah.
Second.
Okay. So once again, any abstentions? Either your hand or your chat. Any no's? Okay, hearing nothing, I declare the work plan approved. For those of you who are leaving now, there'll be a posting of the recording of our next talk that you can listen to. And there are the next meeting is going to be July 29th, so I can go to the board meeting on the 22nd. And as always, I'm available by email. Some of you have found me already, and that's great. So with that, thank you. We're going to move to Bill Egger talking about the Maryland and Virginia data center legislation. Bill, sorry to squeeze you in here, but thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, everybody, today for joining for this next session on updates regarding Virginia and Maryland's data center legislation that has taken place over the course of the past several months. It's great to see many familiar faces join you today to learn about some of the great work going on in Prince William County, the kind of broader region's work on kind of addressing our climate action priorities and being a longtime friend of CEEPC and COG and many throughout the region. It's great to see such progress, though many challenges do still exist. And part of that does include related to kind of the growing incidence of large loads and data centers. And so today we'll have some brief discussion on what's taken place in our respective jurisdictions regarding policy changes that may support or challenge continued growth of the data center community within our region. With next slide, please. Just shameless plug. Well, I'm a longtime friend. My firm, Ethos Sustainability, works with many local governments, businesses, organizations on advancing the energy transition priorities, including but not limited to the work at the intersection of communities, cities, data centers, policy regulation, energy infrastructure, and all of the related issues and opportunities. And so definitely look forward to discussing with any of your needs, with any of you on any of your needs in the future. Next slide, please. We are going to, we'll just, for sake of time and frankly that there's been so much activity over the course of the past several months of legislative work in Maryland and Virginia. This is really just meant as a highlight of the highlights relative to what's passed. We'll talk about a little bit of kind of some related energy infrastructure and energy regulatory legislation that may be impactful. And then we'll also discuss briefly just what didn't pass that I think might be informative for future CEEPC priorities, and then what also has been continued in next session in either jurisdictions to pay attention to. Now, I want to be clear, we're only talking about Virginia and Maryland. In any meaningful way, the DC Council hasn't really weighed on data centers, though there has been certain discussion amongst the DC Council members just on impacts to overall affordability concerns, energy and electricity affordability concerns, reliability and related subject matter, and then the work of the DOEE and the DC Public Service Commission have also had various conversations, but again, we're limiting this conversation just to that of Virginia and Maryland. Next slide, please. So of what passed, kind of at a high level, we're not going to be going through every bit of legislation here, but just I want to highlight 4 that I think are particularly meaningful on the Virginia side. So first, we'll talk about kind of siting and land use, Senate Bill 94, corresponding bill, House Bill 153. Basically mandates that any data center that is 100 megawatts or greater, starting to get what is often called the hyperscaler. It is the hyperscaler kind of scale of data center infrastructure that localities mandate the kind of a site assessment be conducted. High load users are what's called the high energy using facility in legislation. Requires providing the data center to provide an assessment of the such things as like sound impacts on residences and public schools and proximity to the data center facility. It asks for assessment of impacts on water resources, particularly surface and kind of source water resources that may otherwise be used for cooling, and also the kind of adjacent land use that may be impacted, such as agricultural land or parks, historic sites, forest lands, really taking kind of into account what the impacts might look like and providing that information to a locality. It also requires that the electric utility serving these large loads provide a locality information on the necessary energy infrastructure, be it substation, be it transmission infrastructure, such that there's better understanding of what those land use impacts may be as these large data centers provide kind of information on their siting requirements. It also is intended, this information and this assessment work is intended for the locality to accumulate and use for future comprehensive planning purposes to be able to better understand kind of how to make consistent or apply apply consistent requirements across land use and zoning areas, such that kind of better inform how localities actually zone and permit large loads. And then also, I just want to say that there are exceptions. One of those exceptions includes if a facility is kind of already approved by special exception or by right, and exceeds to expand or modify their operations in any way, shape, or form, then those facilities are exempted from providing such an assessment. So here, I think this is one of the more impactful, particularly from local land use kind of authority that our jurisdictions retain. So it's a really important tool that is kind of now at the avail to use. Unfortunately, again, the size requirements for where this is required is extraordinarily large, maybe getting lesser large over time as we see more and more hyperscalers start to enter our region, but ultimately it is an important opportunity for jurisdiction to take advantage of. Second, and Councilwoman Bagley had brought up, particularly in the mid-course review, that monitoring water use, which has been a particular vocal concern of many communities. Any water utility reporting to the State Water Control Board, which is basically most, if not all, water utilities in Virginia who draw water, either surface or groundwater, are now required to report on the water use from data centers that have been issued a air permit by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. And so, which is most cases, kind of all data centers, by virtue of having backup power, they've had to go through a process to obtain an air permit. So any water utility serving that type of load is now required to provide water use data. And so with that, that I think offers some opportunity to have more kind of precision in Virginia around what is the water use requirements for many of our kind of data center facilities. I think what's interesting here too, and this kind of marries with Matt Meyer's statement on the evaluation of fuel cell infrastructure. I just want to point out that with regards to these water resource transparency, what we're seeing too, just the evolution of technology, that in the pace for which that is taking a hold in many of the designs for water data centers may or may not provide useful information in context of water use as new cooling technologies come about, or more kind of efficient operations are introduced that may or may not provide significant information, but at least it's a good start to bring transparency to water use of our data centers, our data center community. Next up, we have a regulation, or increased threshold of regulation on backup generators, increasing the threshold for requirements around what's called Tier 4 generation technology, emergency generation technology, or generator technology. Basically increases the threshold for certain emissions reduction equipment being installed on these emergency generators, everything from technology that reduces particulate matter to nitrous oxide, to also carbon monoxide control as well. And so this is an increased kind of ability to control for the type of emergency generation that is used at those sites. It also doesn't limit Virginia Department of Quality introducing higher threshold or more rigorous rules, but at a starting point, Tier 4 technology is now ultimately a requirement. And then finally, given some of the COGS partners in the region, including the Northern Virginia Regional Commission's work on the concept of heat reclaim, or reusing waste heat from data centers which produce or emit a high amount of reject a high amount of waste heat. The Virginia Department of Energy is to convene a working group and also work on reporting out on opportunities for waste heat reclaim by data centers for many uses. Could be agriculture, could be for building integration, or many other opportunities they may consider. Next slide, please. Want to talk, so that those are the four kind of, I would argue, kind of key data center related, very specifically data center related pieces of legislation that came out of the Virginia General Assembly. I want to talk a little bit about what passed in kind of the energy side that is related to data centers kind of in a very critical way. The first is Senate Bill 253 and House Bill 1393. On one hand, this bill actually extends low-income weatherization programs, but appended to that includes additional requirements of accounting for distribution and capacity charges to data centers, and giving the State Corporation Commission, the Virginia's Utility Regulatory Commission, the authority to determine how costs are allocated relative to distribution infrastructure and for generation capacity, and shifting those costs towards data centers as opposed to socializing those costs across all rate classes, including residential and commercial customer types. And so this is a big movement to help, again, align costs with that are attributed to data centers in alignment with their actual kind of cost share, appropriate cost share. Also want to talk briefly about transmission. With the growing incidence of electrically intensive operations such as data centers or other large loads for that matter, is the necessary increase in transmission infrastructure. And so with that comes two bills that I'll highlight, one of which is giving the State Corporation and Commission additional authority to look at, to reasonably consider the impacts on households and civic infrastructure where certain sizes of transmission infrastructure, in this case 138 kV lines, which are somewhat called subtransmission, much more kind of more pervasive across our communities, giving the State Corporation Commission to include consideration of whether those subtransmission lines have any impacts on households, and giving them due consideration in their processing of what's called a certificate of public necessity and convenience, which is basically the permit which authorizes the construction of transmission. They also extend that to the kind of major large transmission infrastructure, 500 kV and larger, to consider corridors that are away from households, schools, or other civic infrastructure, and really take a hard look at ways to route transmission infrastructure away from many of kind of our communities in a way that minimizes transmission's impact directly with community assets. Another big area is regarding load forecasting, and the State Corporation Commission is to bring together in a technical conference kind of the discussion of the methods and approaches to forecasting electricity load in Virginia. This has significant consequences to how we plan for load forecasting. Has a significant impact on forecasting for the generation needs or infrastructure needs, how costs are apportioned and allocated to various customers. And so the commission is bringing together industry stakeholders and experts to discuss the current practices and opportunities to improve the practices of load forecasting that, again, that has residual effects on infrastructure planning and how costs are borne by various customers. And then, as discussed during the mid-course review and in other discussions earlier this afternoon or this morning, regards kind of notion of cleaning our grid, so to speak, and where accelerated clean energy buyers are large customers who procure. Historically, we're able to procure renewable energy resources. Those renewable energy resources have now expanded in definition to include not only conventional renewables, solar, wind, but also now to include a much broader kind of definition of nuclear and fusion, should that technology be available in any sort of foreseeable future. Jeff, I see your note on the proposed merger between NextEra and Dominion. That's a whole nother conversation for another time, but certainly has impacts on expanding kind of generation capacity in Virginia fairly significantly, with also an increased kind of exposure to renewable energy opportunities as well. Next slide, please. What didn't pass? Just again, there's many that didn't, but I'll just highlight a few. A bill that did not pass regards the State Corporation Commission, giving authority to the State Corporation Commission to issue what's called a certificate of operation. In other words, if for any data center to have in this legislation should have passed, the data center was working to locate in Virginia, they would have to apply for basically a permit or certificate of operation such that they meet certain requirements around maintaining reliability and it not having significant impacts on the operational characteristics of the electrical grid. That did not pass, but it is a growing area of focus that there was some overlapping legislation, or there's in Maryland, there's some overlapping consideration here. So it is a growing trend to give more authority to our utility commissions as we introduce these large loads and how they may electrically impact affordability, reliability, and overall infrastructure considerations. And this may come back up in future iterations of the General Assembly. Another area was on emergency generator operating disclosure, where this legislation would have forced DEQ to maintain a registry of any operating emergency generation in the prior 24 hours, such that if for example, for either testing or in fact some form of loss of load were to require a data center to operate an emergency generator, that they would be required to record that generator's operation such that there's public disclosure and transparency to having operated those assets, regardless of the type of loss of load or if it was just a testing situation. Again, giving I think the public greater transparency and understanding when emergency generators do run and when they do not. Two bills that I'll just highlight regarding that were continued into the 2027 General Assembly would give local authority to localities to take into consideration impacts to the local electrical grid, both in the context of infrastructure requirements, but also reliability. And so the House Bill 1112 was continued to 2027 General Assembly session. The other thing here is the legislation particularly called out Planning District 8, which is generally considered Northern Virginia, or that which is covered by the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. Not only would localities be allowed to request like basically an impact assessment on electrical grid in Planning District 8, they would have to use that for evaluation to consider or deny zoning permits or zoning amendments if it was special use permits or otherwise special exception permits for any land use requirements that would have been used as a kind of a determinant or a deciding factor. The other thing in this 591, House Bill 591, much more loose, but certainly it has the opportunity to help guide future discussion on kind of the helping bring together communities, the data center communities and the utility community to better understand the alignments of energy usage of data center infrastructure, how to work with data center operators on demand response opportunities, renewable energy alignments, and also bearing fair share of costs or apportioning and allocating costs accordingly. Again, this was continued into 2027. Next, please. And we'll speed up here. Just wanted to say one of the big outstanding items in Virginia regards the budget. Many, I imagine, are really paying attention to whether or not the legislature will come to some agreement on a budget for fiscal year 2027. Central issue here is the continuation of the longstanding retail and use tax exemption that has been offered to the data centers since 2008, and it roughly amounts to about $2 billion per year, so not a trivial amount of funding. And so this is ultimately holding up and causing concern amongst the legislature and many communities as to whether this will still be available in the future. Next, and we'll go through Maryland hopefully quickly here. I'll just put out, just ultimately saw a small just small movements, I would say, is the end of the day in opportunities to kind of guide the future development of data centers in the Virginia jurisdiction. On the Maryland side, a little bit different, as opposed to kind of a diversity of legislation. The way that the Maryland legislature focused this year, ostensibly in the context of affordability, brought together an omnibus bill. It's called the Utility Relief Act. It's nearly 250 pages of various legislative work. But I'll just highlight a few. There's kind of work to reduce the threshold for what is considered a large load customer or data center, moving down from 100 megawatts to 25 megawatts with certain load factor characteristics. And that basically puts more facilities under jurisdiction for regulation. There's been kind of cost allocation work to bring more costs in alignment directly with data centers that are causing those costs to occur. There's mandatory reporting now through the Public Service Commission on energy use and water use that I think will be kind of leading edge in not only across the country, but certainly provide the COG and others opportunity to have a little bit more granular understanding of where data centers factor into electricity use in the region. There's opportunities for accelerating permitting based on bringing bring your own generation and capacity opportunities. There's voluntary large load interconnection processes that help speed up interconnection, the movement to interconnect with the distribution and transmission system. There's not necessarily relevant here, but prohibition on data center infrastructure, data center facilities in Baltimore due to longstanding community concerns. And then just to say that the nearly 250-page bill brings together just a vast amount of kind of legislative priority and tried to balance a lot of different priorities on affordability, infrastructure, data centers, costs, reliability, and a variety of other factors. Next slide, please. Just kind of on the energy side here, requirements to be for utility to be part of the regional transmission organization, in this case, the PJM. Kind of notice around transmission development, as well as what's also leading edge in not only this region, but across the country to promote what's called advanced transmission technologies or grid enhancing technologies, which is made to or allows for greater utilization or transmission infrastructure. And then some additional work to help support expanding battery capacity within the Maryland jurisdiction. Next slide, please. These are, I think, ones to pay attention to that did not get taken up in any way, shape, or form. Moratoria on data center approvals, kind of repeal of tax exemptions, as the Virginia jurisdiction is debating their budget related to tax exemptions. Maryland took that did take up some legislation similarly, but though did not take that any further. I think another big one here is the work done to advance mitigating the use of non-disclosure agreements between data center and large loads and jurisdictions, and then operations and siting standards, really having some say into how our data center communities and facilities do operate within our jurisdictions, and then additional requirements around promoting comprehensive planning for data center infrastructure or facilities within communities was another big area of potential focus in the future that didn't pass during this particular year. Next slide, and I think we're closing out here. I mean, I think increased disclosures, which is positive trajectory here. Cost allocation. There's some tools that allow for a new clean energy generation in the region, particularly in Maryland, and then also works improvements to planning, developing, and allocating costs to how electricity infrastructure is planned and developed to support not only our communities but also data center and large load facilities. I think that's the last slide. Yep. apologies to take such a long time, but appreciate the opportunity to share some of these details and happy to answer any questions.
There we go. Leave that please up for just a little bit longer, because I was going to say, instead of taking questions, people should email Bill Egger. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you. I thought the summary of the 250-page Maryland bill from the data center point of view was really interesting. There was a lot of other stuff in there that didn't make people happy.
Yep.
In terms of energy affordability, but and energy efficiency, because there was some energy efficiency program loss in order to do some of this other stuff. But we are way over time, and I really appreciate everybody's attention. I noticed we only lost one person after you were done with Virginia, which I appreciate. And we will see each other July 29th. Let me know any comments or anything before that. And that's our next meeting. Have a happy beginning of summer, and thank you all for your patience. And thank you, Cox staff, for putting up with all this. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
I will stay on for 1 minute if Heidi has anything she needs to say.
That
Nope?
is all.
Okay.
We appreciate it.